Happy Monday, Broncos country. I'm your host, Sam Brown, here with the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Today we're breaking down draft grades. Let the dust settle a little bit from the 2021 NFL Draft. A very eventful draft for the Denver Broncos, who added 10 players, and we're going to go one by one, breaking down grades for each individual one. Let's recap real quick the picks that Denver made on draft week, starting with Patrick Surtain, round 1, number 9 overall. Traded up with the Atlanta Falcons in round 2 for running back Javonte Williams out of North Carolina. Traded down, in the 3rd round twice, and still landed Quinn Meinerz, the center out of Wisconsin Whitewater. Baron Browning, 7 picks later at 105. 2 picks in round 5, both safeties, Jamar Johnson out of Indiana and Caden Stearns out of Texas. Seth Williams in round 6, the wide receiver out of Auburn. And then 3 7th-round picks, Kary Vincent Jr., the cornerback out of LSU. Jonathon Cooper, the edge out of Ohio State. And Marquis Spencer, defensive lineman out of Mississippi State. Like I said, 10 players for Denver. We're going to break them down each individually. But first, I'll give you my draft grade as a whole. I'm going to give it a B+. I thought it was a really strong draft for George Paton. Really got good value at the picks that he needed. The issue of not getting a quarterback still looms out there. I'll ask you guys here in a little bit what you think about it. But, given that they didn't draft a quarterback, I think that this is really as close to best case scenario in terms of some of the players that they got in the NFL draft as you could get. So a B+ for me. We'll break down all these picks individually, like I said. But I want to hear from you first. What grade would you give the Broncos 2021 draft class? Go down in the comments section and let me know. I'm going to be reading through all of your comments. We got to get every single person who's coming across this video to give their grade for the Broncos draft class. A, B, C, D, F. Let me know in the comments. All right, we'll start with Patrick Surtain, round 1, number 9 overall. This is a name that has been linked to the Denver Broncos for quite some time, and now he heads to the Mile High City. Tom's number 1 overall cornerback in this class. A pure lockdown corner with potential to really be among the top lockdown players in this league. Tested well at the Combine at Alabama Pro Day and fits what the Broncos want to do fairly well. He's going to need some work in man coverage, but really thrives in that zone scheme where he can really let his anticipation, his technique, and his awareness really thrive. I like the Patrick Surtain pick. I talked about it on my Twitter the other day. I'm giving this one an A-. And yes, am I a little bit upset that Justin Fields wasn't the pick given that he fell essentially in the Broncos' lap? To a certain extent, but I said this was a possibility back when they traded for Teddy Bridgewater. George Paton had the option to draft a quarterback if he wanted to, if the right one fell in his lap. Justin Fields was there, and clearly George Paton valued Patrick Surtain more and valued that defensive side of the ball first. So can't completely fault him for that, and at least that he's getting an impact player in Patrick Surtain who can learn from Darby and Fuller in year 1. Maybe Fuller doesn't come back in 2022. Surtain slots right in. I'm giving this one an A-. Round 2, pick 35, Javonte Williams, the running back out of UNC. I'm going to give this one my grade here in a little bit, but a really strong player in his time at North Carolina. 19 touchdowns, bounced off of over 70 tackles, 70 missed tackles in 2020. A breakout year for Javonte Williams. And like I said, the Denver Broncos trading up with the Atlanta Falcons in front of the Miami Dolphins to acquire Javonte Williams. Trading up for a running back, not my favorite. I'm going to give this one a B. I like Javonte Williams, the player. There's no doubt about it. I think if he had fell to pick 40, it would have been ideal. But it was clear that Miami was probably pretty high on Javonte Williams at pick number 36. George Paton wanted to jump in front of the Dolphins, and they did so to land Javonte Williams. He'll start by complimenting Melvin Gordon and eventually potentially turn into that lead feature back. And that's a running back he can become. But at least he'll split those carries with Melvin Gordon. Probably a little 65-35 action maybe in favor of Melvin Gordon. But a solid pick overall, a B grade from me. Now, are you upset that Denver didn't draft a quarterback in the NFL draft, whether it was in round 1, a guy like Justin Fields, or maybe a guy even like Kyle Trask, like Kellen Mond? Please, God, don't say like Davis Mills, but a guy maybe in day 2. Let me know in the comments section why for yes and for no. Were you upset that Denver didn't draft a quarterback in the 2021 NFL draft? All right, let's move on to round 3. Like I said, the Broncos trading down a couple times and still landing really good value with Quinn Meinerz. He's listed as a center out of Wisconsin Whitewater, could play guard, especially early on. Tom had a second to third round grade. So the fact that Denver was able to get Quinn Meinerz in the back half of round 3 is incredible value. A late riser in the NFL draft process. I'm giving this one an A. I really like this pick for Denver. This is a guy who easily has long-term starter potential. The measurables show. I think the character shows. I'm sure you Broncos fans have seen the videos that have come out of him, doing the deadlifts with planks of wood and massive barrels and tanks out at his lake house in Canada or wherever he was. That's the kind of stuff I love to see. I love the attitude and the approach to the game that Quinn Meinerz has. I think he's going to bring a strong attitude and a strong mentality to Denver, giving this one an A. 7 picks later, Baron Browning, the linebacker out of Ohio State. Another solid pick, another good value pick by George Paton. I think we saw a lot of those throughout draft week. Baron Browning, a guy that came in to Ohio State as a 5-star recruit out of high school, ridiculous high school tape, and everyone thought this is going to be a guy who will develop into a first-round pick. Didn't completely materialize like that, showed some flashes, but wasn't always consistently that great player. But if he can become that, the player that everyone thought he could be, I think this is going to be a great grade, a great pick overall. I'm giving it a B+ for now. And I think this is a pick that could turn into an A-, an A grade over time, depending on how he develops. He's not ready to start right away. That's the reality of it. And he doesn't really have to, because A.J. Johnson and Josie Jewell are two players you at least feel comfortable with starting at middle linebacker, but Baron Browning could easily sneak into that, could offer a little bit of run stopping and pass rushing ability. I think he can do a little bit of everything, but it's going to take a little time, develop him, shore him up, and I think he'd become a starter on this Broncos defense. All right, we move over now to round 5. 2 picks for the Broncos, like I said, and 2 safeties. And we'll start with Caden Stearns here, the pick at number 152. Another guy who was very highly touted. He was the number 1 ranked player in the state of Texas in his recruiting class, committed to the University of Texas, and showed a lot of strong flashes early on, but never quite put it all together. Dealt with some injuries, some inconsistency as well. This wasn't my favorite draft pick of the NFL draft. I'm going to give it a C+. We talked about Jamar Johnson, and we'll talk about here in a little bit. I like that pick more a little later in the draft, 12 picks later, than I like Kaden Stearns. I think Jamar Johnson is maybe a better fit for what the Broncos want to do and a little bit more versatile than Caden Stearns is. Caden Stearns can be solid, I'm not going to lie. I actually watched him a lot, quite a bit from my time at Oklahoma whenever he played at Texas, but this is a guy that showed a lot of promise early on and then just never quite lived up to it. Another guy who won't be ready to play right away is going to need a little bit of time to really let the production and his development in the NFL game catch up to the athletic tools. So not my favorite pick, but I'll give it a C+, a guy that certainly is solid and could develop into a contributor over time. Now, what was your favorite draft pick by the Broncos this year? So far, I've got to say Quinn Meinerz was my favorite pick the Broncos made. As much as I like Surtain and Javonte Williams, Quinn Meinerz was a home run pick at number 98. I want to hear from you guys in the comments section. Get your votes in as to who was your favorite Broncos draft pick this year. The draft may be over, but we're not stopping our coverage anytime soon here on the Broncos Breakdown. So do me a favor and hit that big red button right below this video and subscribe to the Broncos Breakdown. We're getting close to 3,000 subscribers. Check just this morning, 2,752. Let's get to 3K ASAP. Hit the big red button and subscribe. Join the Broncos Breakdown. We're getting close, and I want to get as many fans of the Broncos here on the channel as I possibly can. All right, pick number 164, like I said, Jamar Johnson. I mean, look, Tom's got a third-round grade on Jamar Johnson, 6th-rated safety. The fact that he slips to pick number 164, I think is really good value for George Paton. Now, there are some off-the-field concerns, some maturity concerns. He maybe swung at some players once or twice during his time at Indiana, but this is a high-upside type of guy. You look at his stats from 2020, 43 tackles, 4 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, and the completion percentage, under 50%, really strong for a safety in his class. I like this pick, like I said, more than I like the Caden Stearns pick. The character concerns are something to be short out, but I think he could, Vic Fangio, in this defense really thrive. I'm going to give this grade a B+. The measurables are there, really what you want. He's got a Kareem Jackson type of mold, 5'11", 205, a strong 40-yard dash, and like I said, can continue to grow in that Broncos secondary. Stearns and Johnson both could really learn from Justin Simmons and Kareem Jackson, and who knows, you may have your safety tandem of the future really long-term in Simmons and or Stearns or Johnson, but I like Johnson's chances maybe a little bit more than Caden Stearns. Round 6, pick 219. Seth Williams, the wide receiver out of Auburn, a solid wide receiver, really tall, high point, the ball kind of guy. 2020, 47 catches for 760 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was their top receiver last year, and those numbers would have been higher if he had played with a good quarterback. Sorry, Auburn fans, Bo Nix ain't it. But Seth Williams might just be. I like this pick overall. Ran a solid 40-yard dash, had some good measurables from his testing day. He's going to need some time, but kind of feels like a Tim Patrick sort of player when you look at his size and what he did with Bo Nix. Really going up in high-pointing balls, exposed some of those SEC DBs. At 6'3", 211, I'm going to give this pick a B-. A solid pick overall. I gave it a B- just because you're assuming that Judy, Sutton, Hamler, potentially Tim Patrick back next year. This is a guy really over time that will need to prove his worth maybe on special teams first and then start to earn those reps on the field. A solid pick nonetheless, especially in round 6. I'm not really going to be bashing any of these 6th or 7th round picks. You're really throwing darts and seeing which one sticks. So a B- for Seth Williams. Round 7, pick number 237, Kary Vincent Jr., the cornerback out of LSU. Tom was higher on Kary Vincent than most, gave him a 5th-round grade. So again, George Paton finding strong value in the later rounds of the NFL draft. I thought this was a solid pick. Not the greatest cornerback in coverage. Is going to need a little bit of work there. He's a little shorter, 5'9", 185. Opted out of the 2020 season, which I wasn't sure was the best decision for him. But nonetheless, this is a guy that I think could come on and provide a couple different things, not just on defense and potentially some early snaps. I think he could provide some special teams value early on as well. I like this pick, B+ on my end for Kary Vincent Jr. I mean, a 4.38 40-yard dash is pretty damn good. And I think that this is a guy that could potentially challenge Deontay Spencer for some of those return reps early on. Maybe more on the kick side of things than on the punt side of things, but I like Kary Vincent's straight line speed. Needs to work a little bit more on his defensive reads and really transitioning to the NFL level in that regard, but he'll have plenty of time to do it between Fuller, Darby, now Surtain, Michael Ojemudia, as well as, Sang Bassey, Bryce Callahan, so plenty of time for him to develop in that regard. And then 2 defensive linemen in round 7 to wrap up the Broncos 2021 NFL draft. Jonathon Cooper, the edge out of Ohio State at pick number 239. Another highly touted guy coming out of high school going to Ohio State. And another guy that really didn't quite put it all together, didn't really combine all the tools that he could have to find success at Ohio State. Still had a solid season with Ohio State in just 8 games, 24 tackles, 3.5 sacks, and a forced fumble. This is a guy that's going to need to develop, over time, show his value on special teams. Solid measurables again as well for Jonathon Cooper. Certainly not a bad player, and he'll have time to learn behind his fellow Ohio State counterpart, Draymond Jones, Shelby Harris, as well as, learning pass rush from guys like Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, Malik Reed. Jonathon Cooper is going to have time to develop and really grow into a player that I think many people thought he could be. I'll give this one a B. Right down the middle, solid pick, nothing crazy about it at 6'2", 253. Again, another special teams guy early on who will need to earn his snaps on that Broncos defensive line. Now predict the Broncos 2021 record for me in the comments section. After this offseason and the draft that George Paton has put together, I'm feeling a lot better about their chances of competing in 2021, at least for a playoff spot. I'll put my early bold prediction at 11-6. How about that? I think that this team has the pieces around the quarterback position. Obviously, they will live and die by Drew Lock / Teddy Bridgewater, but I'm feeling pretty good after draft week. Let me know in the comments section. Remember, 17-game season, so be sure to keep that in mind with your votes. finally, last pick, Marquis Spencer, round 7, 253. This is a guy that I was not very familiar with going into draft week, but a bigger guy, a thicker boy at 6'3", 301 pounds. This is really a guy who can clog the inside, more of a round stopper. Yes, Tom bringing the fatties only movement to the Mile High City. He's going to be a guy he's going to earn his value on special teams again early on. Develop as a pass rusher. That's really his biggest room for improvement, but can add some solid run reps. A B for me again, right down the middle. Nothing crazy about this. Him and Jonathon Cooper both over time. I think you'll see earn reps as their seasons go on. And overall, I think a really strong, like I said, draft class by George Paton and the Denver Broncos. Started with Surtain and Javonte Williams, carried it on with a guy like Meinerz and Baron Browning, and now adding value pieces in the later rounds. I really like what George Paton did in his first offseason and his first draft as the Broncos GM. But let me know how he did. Grade the Broncos draft in the comments section.